Welcome to The Explainer. Today we are tackling something that might feel like the end of the road, but honestly, it is a complete legal minefield. We are talking about closing a business. Specifically, we're going to walk through exactly how to properly, legally, and safely close out an LLC in the state of Georgia. If you have poured your time, your energy, and your hard-earned money into a venture, the absolute last thing you want is for its closure to come back and threaten your personal financial security. The stakes here are high, and getting this wrong can cost you dearly. But don't worry, we're going to make sure you get it right.
Okay, let's dive into this, because there's a massive and quite frankly super dangerous misconception floating around out there among business owners. The question is simple. Can you just walk away from your LLC? Can you literally just lock the front doors, empty out the business bank account, and stop answering the phone? I mean, it sounds easy enough, right?
Well, the short answer is absolutely no way. Passive abandonment is not a legal strategy. It's a massive financial trap. Look, if you just walk away, your Georgia LLC actually remains a legally active entity. It's in perpetual existence until a formal certificate of termination is accepted by the state. So if you abandon it, guess what? You stay on the hook. You are going to continue racking up state registration fees, late penalties, and these quiet growing tax liabilities. And the absolute worst part? By ignoring the legal rules of closing your business, you potentially pierce that personal liability protection that your LLC structure gave you in the first place.
So to protect yourself, we have to do this by the book. Here is our 5-step plan. 1. The basics of dissolution. 2. Pre-dissolution requirements. 3. Filing the legal paperwork. 4. Taxes and post-dissolution tasks. And 5. Common mistakes to avoid.
All right, kicking things off with Section 1, the basics of dissolution. Before we get into the weeds, what does the word dissolution actually mean under Georgia law? Basically, there are two ways this goes down. Administrative dissolution happens when the state literally forces your business to close because of noncompliance. Think of things like forgetting to file your annual registration. Voluntary dissolution, on the flip side, is when you, the business owner, make the proactive, formal choice to legally terminate the business. Now, for this explainer, we are focusing entirely on taking control through a proactive voluntary dissolution. That way, you leave your business on your own terms, completely free of any lingering liabilities.
Moving right along to Section 2, pre-dissolution requirements.
Before you even think about filing official paperwork with the state, you've got to do a little internal housekeeping. And there's a very clear chronological order to this. Step 1. Review your operating agreement. This document should outline exactly how your LLC is supposed to handle closing down. But what if you don't have one, or maybe it doesn't even mention closing? Well, in that case, Georgia law defaults to requiring a unanimous vote from all LLC members to dissolve the company. Step 2 is actually holding that vote and getting it documented in writing. Step 3 is notifying your creditors, and Step 4 is settling your debts. Listen, you absolutely cannot distribute any leftover business assets to yourself or your partners until those debts are paid. If you distribute assets when the business can't actually pay its bills, Georgia law says you can be held personally liable for every cent of that money.
Now, I get it. Settling debts can be incredibly intimidating, especially if cash is tight right now. But the Georgia Attorney General's Consumer Protection Division actually offers some really great practical advice. They say, if you owe the debt but do not have money available to pay it, ask the debt collector if you can work out a payment plan. Be honest about what you can afford to pay. The absolute key thing here, though, if you do negotiate a reduced settlement or a payment plan, you must get it in writing. Documenting these agreements is exactly how you protect your personal assets from someone having a misunderstanding down the road.
And when you're notifying your known creditors that you're closing up shop, you have to do it in writing. Plus, under Georgia law, you must give them a hard deadline to submit any claims they have against your business. That deadline cannot be less than 6 months from the date you actually mail the written notice. Whatever you do, don't rush this window. It's a statutory requirement designed to systematically wipe out claims so they literally can't come back to haunt you years from now.
All right, we are on to Section 3, filing the legal paperwork.
Once your internal house is completely in order, it's time to make things official with the Georgia Secretary of State. Now, what's really interesting about this next form is, well, let's just look at Form CD-414, the Statement of Commencement of Winding Up. While filing this specific form is technically optional in Georgia, it is highly, highly recommended. Why? Because it serves as a formal public notification to the state and to the rest of the world that you are actively resolving your affairs.
Actually, let's just quickly clear up the difference between the two main forms you're going to encounter here. Form CD-414, which we just talked about, is a statutory prerequisite if you want to use Georgia's specific legal mechanisms to limit and block future creditor claims. Basically, it starts the clock. Form CD-415, the Certificate of Termination, well, that's the final document, the grand finale. Once the Secretary of State accepts Form CD-415, your LLC officially and legally ceases to exist. You want both of these to be totally, completely dialed in.
And hey, get ready for some incredibly rare good news when it comes to dealing with legal paperwork. $0. Yep, you heard me right. Filing your dissolution paperwork online with the Georgia Secretary of State is completely free. Now, if you're old school and prefer to mail in paper forms, it is going to cost you a $10 service fee, but doing it digitally costs you absolutely nothing. Talk about an incredible value for the peace of mind it's buying you.
Okay, shifting gears to Section 4, Taxes and Post-Dissolution Tasks.
Listen, filing that termination form with the state does not magically wipe away your tax obligations. It's not a magic wand. So here is your actionable checklist. You have to file a final income tax return with the Georgia Department of Revenue. And if you collected sales tax or if you had employees, you have to manually go in and close your sales and use tax accounts as well as your employer payroll withholding accounts. Finally, you need to write a letter to the IRS in Cincinnati to cancel your employer identification number. If you just sit back and assume these accounts will close themselves, the automated systems are going to keep expecting returns and they will automatically start stacking massive penalties against you.
Let's move to and see how this builds, especially when you are dealing with the Georgia Department of Revenue. They actually have two exact mandatory requirements when you file that final state tax return. First, you must literally check the box on the physical return indicating that it is in fact the final return. Second, you have to attach a written explanation detailing the specific reasons for the dissolution of the company. Please, whatever you do, do not forget that explanation letter, where the state's computer system will just assume you are still operating. Which brings us to our last main part, Section 5, Common Mistakes to Avoid.
Let's use this final section as your protective shield. Just to put things into perspective for a second, over 37,000 Georgia establishments closed between March 2023 and March 2024 alone. Closing a business is incredibly common. But because it's so common, a lot of people just rush through it or take terrible advice. Getting this right is absolutely crucial to your future financial health.
So the crucial point is, avoid these top 3 traps like the plague. First, failing to notify your creditors in writing. Doing that just leaves you completely exposed to surprise claims years down the road. Second, neglecting those final sales and withholding tax returns. That's going to trigger a total nightmare of automated state penalties. And third, distributing business assets to yourself before actually paying off your business debts. That is strictly illegal under Georgia law and directly strips away your personal liability protection.
Now, I want to throw out a quick lifeline here. What if you're watching this explainer and suddenly realize, oh no, my LLC was already administratively dissolved by the state because I forgot to file an annual report? Take a breath, don't panic. In Georgia, you actually have a 5-year window to correct those compliance errors, pay the back fees, and formally reinstate the business so you can then go ahead and close it properly.
Throughout this whole journey, your absolute best friends are going to be the official state resources, the Georgia Secretary of State Corporations Division, and the Georgia Department of Revenue online portals. And hey, remember, just as the Secretary of State strongly recommends themselves, you really should consider hiring a professional business attorney or a tax advisor, especially if you have complex debts or tricky liabilities to untangle.
So that brings us to our final thought. Are you leaving your financial future to chance, or are you ready to make a clean break? Look, taking shortcuts during dissolution might save you an hour of paperwork today, but it can literally cost you thousands of dollars and years of stress tomorrow. Follow the steps, file the forms, close those tax accounts, and walk away with total peace of mind.
Finally, just a quick reminder that this explainer and all the content we've talked about today is for informational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional legal or tax advice. Always consult with a qualified professional regarding your specific business situation. Thank you so much for joining me today on The Explainer.